Thank you for joining us. My guest is a political scientist. He is a director for the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Professor Ransford Gyampo. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And a happy new year to you.
Many happy returns.
It's a pleasure meeting you,
yeah,
speaking
nice
to
meeting you. Yeah.
Okay. Before we even talk about the expectations of the new administration as they start working on day one, let's just flash back to Saturday. What were your impressions of the event that took place on Saturday at the Independence Square?
Well, I was happy. I saw myself, and I still see myself as a very proud Ghanaian. There was a very smooth transition from one democratically elected leader to the other. There was no tension, and everything went well in a manner that continued to project Ghana as a beacon of hope in terms of efforts to consolidate democracy and a wave of change, democratic change that is blowing across the Africa region. And so I was very happy. I saw two former heads of state and then one who was joining, i.e. President Mahama, and the way they went, walked gallantly to shake hands with the president-elect, and the kind of statement and speech that the president, made, were all inspiring. And at the end of the day, I felt that I was a very proud Ghanaian. I'm still a proud Ghanaian. It's good for our democracy. We have done this without much fuss, and I am proud. And going forward, around the same time I was thinking about Yahya Jammeh in Gambia, and I'm saying that it's he should know. I was also thinking about what the attempted mutiny in Cote d'Ivoire, and the point must be made that those days are long gone. We are now trying to entrench democracy and to consolidate democracy over the Africa region. And so I'm calling on all African leaders who are still down there at a minimum level of transitional democratic status to see what has happened in Ghana and to emulate. And I'm telling you, if you travel outside the country, people see you and then they are very proud of you. Given what has done. It will encourage people to come in. It will encourage investors, and then it will make us a good people, because democracy is the most preferred form of government, which, when properly practiced, when its basic canons and features are implemented, would also catapult us to development.
What do you make of, what do you take from the speech that the president delivered? What are the highlights for you?
The highlights, one key thing, maybe two key things. First of all, the role of the citizens. He was talking about the fact that we needed to be citizens and not spectators. I think that is key. A government would thrive and be successful when you also have an active citizenry. The challenge that has continuously plagued our democracy is a kind of passive citizenry who become only active in the lead up to election. After election, they relapse. After election, they recall into their shells. We call it deep participation in political science, a situation or a practice where people would do all manner of things just to get a leader elected. Afterwards, they recall and they don't want to do anything in politics. They see politics as belonging to some people, apart from a few Ghanaians who may be active on social media and may play a role in phone-in sessions. The rest remain spectators and all that. But
isn't that because people are focusing on trying to keep body and soul together, find bread and butter?
Well, you'll be able to, the essence of governance or governments are elected to solve problems. And so if you have an active citizenry willing to keep government on its toes, willing to demonstrate that, look, you cannot take us for a ride, and that we are prepared to keep you on your toes, government will be compelled to do the right thing, and that will translate into tangible developmental outcome that will be reflected in the pocket of the ordinary people. And so I like the fact that he touched on the fact that you need a citizen that would not serve as spectators. And in that case, they are also, he called indirectly on Ghanaians to also have attitudinal change. The attitude that sees government as belonging to some people, or government is for somebody, or somebody sitting somewhere and then you not being part, and so you still find yourself in that passive mood, I mean, should be a thing of the past. And if he's going to put this call into action, he would be able to inspire a critical mass of the citizen, and that's leadership. Leadership is simply your ability to influence people and to inspire confidence among them, such that they are always willing to give enthusiastic cooperation to help you succeed. And so if he follows through this call and he leads by example, he puts in the right measures and mechanisms, he will be able to inspire so many people, and no nation can develop without leadership. And so I like that call. The other bit was about Parliament. I've been talking about winner takes all for a long time, and one of the manifestations of winner takes all is we having the kind of subservient Parliament that we have.
Because action must be taken by the president for things to happen. I mean, as he speaks right now, members cannot sponsor bills.
Members cannot sponsor bills. And then the other bit is that Parliament is deficient in playing a key role and performing their oversight responsibility because of our constitutional hybridity. The fact that we say that some percentage, 50% of cabinet ministers must be appointed from Parliament.
But why have we waited so long for us to now have a conversation on this? I mean, we could have decided to change this.
No, we've not waited so long. We've been talking about this. I mean, it's something that has been, we've researched at the IEA, for instance. There's been several work that has been carried out, by them, and then I've been a research fellow there, and we've done so many things about it. During the constitutional review process, these issues came up and all that. Unfortunately, the Constitutional Review Commission's report was, in my view, a disappointment, particularly the recommendation on how to deal with our constitutional hybrid, the challenges of our constitutional, hybridity. I mean, the recommendation that they made was a disappointment. Whilst we were saying that let us have a strict separation of powers so that people would build career as parliamentarians, and then the executive will also focus on its core mandate, they said, well, the president should not be compelled to appoint majority of his cabinet ministers, from Parliament.
Is that on the start? Really?
Yeah, no. So if you say that, you can also have a daring president who can then say that, well, I'm even going to appoint all my ministers from Parliament. And so then it will further cripple and weaken Parliament. If Nana Addo says that he wants to ensure that we have an independent Parliament, then I'm thinking that he would have to rethink the whole constitution review process. That, in my view, now, is it a fiasco? I mean, where we don't know,
it's gone quiet,
the Mahama administration couldn't carry it to its logical conclusion. And so then the Nana Addo administration must resurrect the processes and then see other provisions that would help.
But is it not because nobody willingly cuts away powers that they have? I mean, to make this dream come true, you'd have to clip the wings of a president, as it were, and it would take away some of the powers that you have to influence decisions in the legislature.
Well, but that is what we call constitutionalism. Constitutionalism essentially means fettering, shackling, and restricting the unbridled exercise of powers of those who exercise it. And so, in a the fact that you have a constitution in a country does not mean there is constitutionalism, because you may have a constitution that may give unfettered powers, that may give a lot of powers to the executive. And so if you are thinking about promoting constitutionalism and Nana Addo is saying, I want an independent parliament, then we should be thinking of a parliament that would have also would have powers to play as a countervailing authority to the powers of the executive. And power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And so I think it was a right statement. I don't think that Nana Addo, by any stretch of imagination, will be talking about he having unfettered powers and the fact that he should his powers shouldn't be checked and all that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been talking about we having an independent parliament should play its its oversight, role and all that. So basically, these two things that he said so many things that in my view were quite inspiring and all that. But these two things for me hit me, and I am proud to re-echo them.
He also talked about challenges ahead, and that kind of segues into our conversation now, because today is the first official working day of this new administration. And he did probably try to focus our minds onto, okay, wow, the euphoria is gone, it's time for us to work, and just tuning our minds to the fact that it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be easy. There are challenges ahead. From where you sit as a political scientist, what are these challenges that you think he's talking about?
Well, first of all, how to forge national cohesion. Some elections have been held. Yes, he's been given a very resounding mandate, but some people will still be brooding over defeat, and you need to bring all of them on board. That's one thing. The Nado administration has a lot of goodwill given the vote margin. It's benefited from a lot of goodwill. And don't forget, this is a unique government. The first opposition leader to have won an election without a second round. It's never happened in the history of the Fourth Republic that started in 1992. Every opposition leader that won an election, we had to go through a second round so you can garner support from other parties and all that to win. But this is the first government that won an election from opposition without going through the second round.
What's the significance of that?
The significance is that the mandate is huge. The goodwill is huge. So the one challenge is how to sustain this goodwill without dissipating it. It means that the policies that will be put in place, the kinds of people he chooses to appoint as his ministers, the kinds of things he wants to do within the first 100 days up to 6 months must be things that would sustain the goodwill. They should not bring about disappointments. So in that regard, it calls for serious thinking, serious introspection. Who are you going to appoint as ministers? Are you going to appoint people who just did your bidding, people who supported you? You have to do a balance between competence and loyalty and all that. You have to also be sure that you are not accused of creating job for the boys. And then again, you must ensure that the size of your government, whilst you are dealing with you not wanting to fall into the quagmire of the allegation of having created job for the boys, you also must have a size of government that can be described as optimum, so that you don't appoint so many people in a manner that bloats or become a burden on the public purse, and at the same time, your government, your staff are also not that few that will be incapable of carrying out, the task ahead.
But Prof, we do hear governments, people, administrations, especially when they are in opposition, they talk about how they point fingers at how big the administration was. They come in and they tell us, we didn't know the enormity of the task ahead, and so we've had to make these changes, and then we have ministries which are renamed, then we have people who are appointed, you have special assistants, you have all manner of people floating around, staffers, and then the budget gets bigger.
Well, so you see, I was quite following Nado during his campaign. At a point in time, I realized that he was quite circumspect in the kinds of things that he was saying, because if you are in government, things that you see are different from when you are in opposition. You remember J. Kufuor was among the first to criticize Jerry Rawlings for having 83 ministers and deputy ministers, and he compared us to South Africa, he compared us to America, he compared us to UK. I think UK has 13 ministers. Japan runs the third most prosperous economy with about 17 ministers. US, they have less than 20, and I have done a study on that that, ministerial appointment and government expenditure in Ghana's Fourth Republic, and I looked at the number of ministers that each regime has had to appoint. And so Kufuor criticized Jerry Rawlings. Now, when he came in, he had 88 ministers. Okay, and when he was asked, then he gave that excuse that, well, when he was outside, he saw things different.
But is it not the patronage system that we operate here, where you see the president, and it ties into the conversation we've had about the powers of the president. The president is almost like a god. He appoints, he disappoints, he can make you, he can unmake you. And the system makes it very, very interesting for the president to do these things. He can change your status.
Yeah, but the point is that if you don't tamper, if you don't become measured in the exercise of your powers of appointment, then what happens is that the few wealth that is created is gulped down by the extensive number of people you tend to appoint. And I'm not sure you've seen how much it costs to hire one minister. I'm not sure you've examined how much it costs to hire one deputy minister. It is enormous.
Yes, I'm sure, because we have to look at fuel costs, you have to look at a car,
you are looking at fuel costs, gardener, day watchman, night watchman, their clothing allowance, their fuel allowance,
entertainment, business class trips,
and
things like that.
It's so huge and all that. So Kufuor did that. Fast forward from Kufuor to Professor Mills. Professor Mills had 75 ministers and deputy ministers. Then John Mahama came. If you put the number of people he appointed up to, even at the last time I was counting, including quote unquote the 5 wise men and all, they've put all of them together, they were numbering almost up to 100 and all that. I'm expecting the another administration to reduce this number to maybe around 50, so that we can describe his government as an optimum size government. Yes, all things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. You have the power to exercise to appoint so many people, but the point is you should also be mindful of the burden it will heap on the and the implication of such enormous appointment, you know, on the taxes of the nation.
You're watching GH Today. This is Hard Talk with Professor Ransford Gyampo. He's the director for the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. We're looking at the first working day of the new administration as they were sworn in, and the president and the vice president sworn in over the weekend, and what to expect. Your WhatsApps on 02885 100 600, and on Twitter the hashtag is GH Today. Prof, talking about appointments, and I'm pretty sure that today a further list of appointments will be dropping. How does the president manage all these lobbyists, people who will be walking the corridors of power, people who will be placing strategic calls to members of his team that he's already put together, his chief of staff, his executive secretary, his director of communications? How does he manage this? Not to talk of chiefs and other recognized bodies who are going to be filing to his office to come and ostensibly congratulate him, but also, I'm sure, looking for some favors, some presidential favors.
Well, it is quite usual. Some people...
Necessary, though?
Necessary, but sometimes unnecessary.
Yeah, is it not time wasting?
Some people would deliberately even put their names out, tell their colleagues to put their names out, so that it tests the waters. And I mean, it is something that, in my view, I mean, lobbying is quite normal in every democratic dispensation. But it's up to the president to be his own person. He has the goodwill. He has the mandate. He must ensure that he appoints only competent people who would help him fulfill the enormous promises that he's made to Ghanaians. And so in doing so, he should be mindful that these people would come in to try to lobby. But if the person is not qualified, if the person is not competent to handle that position, you don't have to do that. So I will call on the president, and of course I expect that you haven't gone through the mill for a long time. Look, from the days that Ghana was formed up till now, I haven't seen any president who has the pedigree, okay, who has been through the mill like Nana Addo. Okay, Nkrumah, what did he do to become the president? Where was he? Nana Addo has been there. He's worked his way into the system. He's gone and come and been defeated and all that. And so I believe he
Maybe President Kufuor also has that kind of pedigree, because he started out as a deputy minister.
Yeah, how many months and he resigned?
Yes.
I mean, he didn't serve for long. But I'm saying,
and was in the wilderness for a while, and then started again in '92.
Yeah, but Nana Addo has been active constantly and continuously for a long time. And so I'm saying that he has been through the mill, and then he's been through fire. He knows what is right to do for the nation. Okay, and so having been defeated in various bids to become president and going through all the processes and then now becoming president, I believe that he would not disappoint. And in that regard, he should be very cautious. He should be very circumspect in the way and manner he gives ears to the kinds of things that people tell him when it comes to deciding on who should be appointed. In my view, he should go for meritocracy, and he should also be mindful of this winner-take-all practice that always say that, well, because we have won, we must take everything to ourselves. And we are talking about the partisan monopolization of power, the partisan monopolization of resources, the partisan monopolization of opportunities.
Is this a feature in African democracies?
Well, it's a feature in many African democracies, but very prevalent and very pronounced in our part of the world, Ghana. Okay, so once we have won, we have to appoint everything and everybody. And sometimes the challenge is that in doing such appointments, there is no recourse to meritocracy. And so you are looking for party apparatchiks, those who served as, those are the people you are trying to appoint. But I'm saying that if you're looking for, I remember I was at a function where we were criticizing the late President Mills for promising to appoint 40% of women as ministers and yet not being able to do so. And then we were also criticizing the idea that his response that, look, he looked for the women, he couldn't find them. And one top politician said, if you could not find them in your party, look for them elsewhere. And so my point is that Nana Addo must go for competence, and he must select meritocracy over partisan support.
So you've got to be good at what you do. And then if you're a party member, yes, fine, it's a bonus. But if you are good at what you do and you're not in the party, he should soon have a look at it. That's
what I'm saying. That is the way to bring...
Is he not going to antagonize the party? Because he rode on the back of the elephant, which is the party, to get into power. So if the party now starts calling the shots, is it not in order?
Well, I remember during the Mills' time, Henry Martin Newman, he was criticized for appointing Henry Martin Newman. People were saying he's not a party person. Some even criticized him for bringing on board Dr. Kwabena Dufo when we were fighting, when we were struggling, where was he and all that. These things do not matter to anybody who is interested in the fight against poverty, anybody who is interested in fighting to extricate Ghana from the quagmires of poverty and underdevelopment, anybody who is interested in bringing about total transformation and development wouldn't think about this, because at the end of the day, it is the mandate that has been reposed in you that matter. You have to be accountable to the people who voted for you. And in being accountable to them, you should be seen to have acquitted and discharged yourself. You should be seen to have redeemed and fulfilled the promise. And if appointing people who are not qualified into positions, filling square pegs in round holes, wouldn't help you fulfill your promise. You shouldn't do that. And so I think that given the goodwill that he has, people, even within his party, will hail him if he decides to go for competence and meritocracy over any other thing.
What's the hardest decision that the president will make in the coming 100 days?
Well, I don't know. He has a lot of decisions to make. But one of the things that he may have to do that may, of course, be unpleasant will be to look into a party faithful's face and say, well, I'll give you this appointment, but I'll choose this man over you. I mean, it's hard. And I know he's going to go through a lot, because there are people who may have helped him. There are people who may have been with him all this while in fighting for the party, who may not benefit from any appointment at all. It's not about our party is in government and so it's time for us to chop. It's
but that's
Ghana.
how the guys on the ground think about it.
Well, I'm sure.
So we've suffered for 8 years in the wilderness. That's what they'll be saying.
I know.
It's time.
I know.
It's time to eat.
I know, but it's not about eat and chop. It's about governance. Okay?
Maybe we don't understand governance.
Well,
we think,
no.
And you hear people say
at the helm of affairs.
My people are in power now. That's how they say it. My party is in power.
No, the one at the helm of affairs, the president, I believe, understands these issues better than many Ghanaians. And so I want to believe that he would put in place mechanisms and measures to keep some of these pressures at bay. Because if it's about that is winner takes all. If it's about our government has come and so it is time for us to chop, then that becomes a recipe for the confiscation of public latrines, the recipe for the confiscation of KVIPs, of lorry parks, and of all manner of things that belongs to all of us. I think that is not the way to go. And so, yes, our government may have come, as people will say, but then we should look at a broader picture. What is the government expected to do? At the end of the day, what Nana Akufo-Addo decides to do must benefit Ghanaians. It must be able to help us meet our 3 square daily square meals. It should be able to bring clothing and shelter to us. The things that he decides to do should be able to ease the burden of the ordinary people. At the end of the day, if he's able to do that, that is when Ghanaians will say our government has come. Not a section of Ghanaians, but all of us must be able to say that a government that we own has come. And we will be able to say that if he decides to put the right people in place, the right measures in place, and to ensure that he deals effectively with that winner-takes-all situation that creates we in government and them not in government.
The 100 days will be on the 17th of April. I've done those calculations. What are you expecting the president to have achieved in those first 100 days?
Well, first of all, within the first 100 days, he should have been able to put together a solid team of ministers and people he is expected to work with. He should have been able to have a firm grasp over the issues, the challenges that confront as a people, because I told you, if you are in opposition, you see the things different. If you get there, you see things different. And
he didn't talk about power in his inaugural speech. Was that a big omission? Energy is our big issue.
But the Mahama administration said it has solved it, and at least from where I live, we don't see that much and all that. And so, he should be able to have firm grasp over the various challenges confronting Ghanaians, and then he should have a quick antidote that will tame those challenges, and he shouldn't be seen to be overly hyping the problems confronting the people of Ghana, because you are giving power plus the problems that the nation faces. And so, yes, there will be challenges, but you don't want a situation. I think the Kufuor administration, when it took over, they spent quite a lot of time talking about the challenges that confronted the people. If
that was the truth, why not say the hard truth?
No. We know there are challenges, but sometimes there's a tendency for you to overly hype the challenges in a manner that gives you an excuse not to tackle them, on a frontal manner. And so my point is that we know that there are challenges, and when you were given the power, when you were asking for the mandate, it was not rosy. Otherwise, you wouldn't have even had the courage to be asking for power. You know there are challenges. That's why you were saying, give me the mandate to be able to fix those challenges. So when you go and you see them, the point is, be a man and have the solutions to them. It is only when this is done effectively and proactively that somebody like me, I'll clap for you. Somebody and people like well-meaning Ghanaians and people who are level-headed will say that, look, this is what we want a president to do, and this is what has been done. It is only when these things are done effectively, that we'll be able to break that, in my view, the bogus practice of two-term regime cycle of change. You know, so many people are talking about why the NDC lost the elections, and there's one thing that people are not looking at. Since 1992, we have a practice that scholars like Huntington have written about. We call it two-term regime cycle of change. As in, people get fatigue. There's regime fatigue once you spend 8 years in office. And so you see, when President Mahama was trying to be clever to say that, look, I have gone only once, and so give me another term, Ghanaians were more clever by looking at party, because so many studies have shown that Ghanaians do not vote for personalities, they vote for political parties. So Haywood says the party identification model of voting is so pervasive in Ghana. So whilst Mahama was projecting himself, Ghanaians were looking at the party, saying that the party has been in power for 8 years. But my point is that it is irrational for us to continue to be changing governments simply because they have done 8 years. Okay, we compare ourselves to Malaysia and say that we all have independence around the same time and Malaysia is doing well. Do you know what Malaysia did? At one point in time, they had a leader, not an imposter, not somebody who was not democratic, but he stayed in office for 22 years because he was able to form some kind of complex alliances with the various opposition parties to keep him, to ensure that projects and programs that were initiated were carried and implemented to their logical conclusion.
So the parallel here would be because our constitution will not allow you to stay for more than 8 years. Maybe the party.
I know, but my point is that the party can continue and produce produce leaders who will be able to take over from people who have reigned or who have ruled and all that. And you'll be able to break this cycle when a government who give convincing promises, a government who said so many things in the lead up to election, is able to commit itself to what it has promised to do to the people, commit itself to it, and ensure that they are fully achieved. If you do that, I believe that people will say that, look, they promised us XYZ, they have done it. And so let us continue to respect this particular political party. Let us continue to keep them in office. But if we don't do what we said we're going to do, if you don't do what we had promised people that we're going to do, and then you wait into the dying minutes of election and you begin to flood the whole area with infrastructure development and all that, many people feel insulted when you do that. And so you see, that's anytime regime fatigue sets in, even rational socio-economic interventions upset people.
Is it also not possible to have a situation where, because, and I've heard this phrase so long now, especially during the election time, that Ghanaians are wide awake, where they won't let things slide by them. Can we look forward to a day where Ghanaians will not even wait for 8 years to keep you in there? If you do not perform to expectation by 4 years, they may give you a red card.
Well, that's what they did to President Mahama. Essentially and technically, the party, he and his party. I mean,
no, but you were arguing that it was an 8-year thing.
Well, it was an 8-year.
If you look at it from the party perspective, that was an 8-year thing.
It is possible.
And since Ghanaians vote on party basis, is it not likely that if this administration does not perform well, they may be booted out?
If we are properly socialized, and like you're saying, gradually Ghanaians are getting this, and gradually Ghanaians are getting becoming wiser and wiser and all that. It should be possible for us to say that, look, you went there, you goofed terribly, we can't continue, we can't give you another 2 term, and so we're kicking you out. But the challenge is that there can be no meaningful discussion of development without talking about some form of stability. And so you shoot yourself also in the foot when you want to be changing every 4 years. Because, see, if you want to do the calculation, government sometimes will take about 1 year, okay, to settle down. The next year is district level elections, okay? And it is within the hinterlands and the rural areas that your policies must really must be of relevance to the people there. And so there is district level election. You are trying to fight it, you are trying to ensure that things are done well so that that election, goes on smoothly. The third year, you are contesting for your own party's ticket to be able to help you contest the next election. And so the internal contest sometimes is even more dangerous and divisive, and it takes a lot of toll on the presidential candidate, even than the main election. So you are doing all this. The 4th year, you are going into the main election. And so within 4 years, if you want to look at these monumental hurdles that the president would have to be jumping, I mean, it takes a heavy toll on him. So technically, you wouldn't have a government doing a lot within the first 4 years. Look at Gyampo. He did so many social interventions, but most of them happened during the second year. And so that's why I liked it when he was exiting power. He made that recommendation for the need for us to extend that 4-year regime. If it is 7 years and all that,
it wasn't taken lightly by Ghanaians.
Well, no, I don't think so. I have not conducted any research to say that it wasn't taken lightly. But the point is, the fact that the man made that recommendation when he was exiting, he didn't make that recommendation to say that let's change the constitution to favor me.
I do remember Vincent Assisi, late Vincent Assisi of the NDC, also once upon a time suggested that we should probably have a 1, 6, or 7 year term. And that was also taken with a lot of partisan flavor.
I mean,
but it's the kind of similar argument that he was making, that you need a broad amount of time to do what you have to do. And then you just go.
I mean, precisely. Because the 4 years, I mean, technically, if you look at the hurdles and the kinds of things that you have to be doing and all that, it's not enough for any president to do any meaningful development and all that. And so I go with that school of thought that believes that if we could do probably, in my view, 6 years, 2 terms, or 1 7-year term, and then you are gone. I mean, that should be able to help us to ensure that a leader who is given the notice is able to put in place measures that will be solid enough to transform, the lives of people.
But then you also agree that if you had a 6-year term or 1 7-year term, in the current situation as it stands, with power not devolved to the lower levels, and that everybody, the district assembly, the DCEs are elected or appointed by the president, it will lock a lot of people out of the governance process. So probably if we decentralize, then these things would be manageable for those who are in opposition out of executive power, but still also having their parties controlling things at the lower levels.
Well,
do you not think
decentralization is very key. We have called for the direct election of MMDCA several years ago. There's a paper I wrote way back in 2005, even before 2005.
What do people do with these papers when you write these papers?
Well, I mean, well, sometimes if you're able to talk about them, you tend to influence public policy. It depends on where you publish them. But in our part of the world, to be known, you should publish your papers outside and all that. And
then it comes in back and then people see it. Oh, this is what he published out there.
Yeah. But the point is, we've been talking about direct election of MMDCs for a long time. 2005, I was talking about it. The then Kufuor regime in their party manifesto said MMDCs would be ultimately elected within 8 years. They didn't do that. As for the NDC, they had been consistent in saying that they would not ensure the election of MMDCs until recently, when we're going to go into elections. And I presented a paper like that as part of dealing with fanatics or politics at the IEA, where we call for MMDCs to also be elected. Then we heard the president doing a U-turn saying that he would ensure that MMDCs are elected. Nanado has also said that MMDCs will be elected. This gives true meaning to power to the people.
On the ground.
On the ground.
Indeed.
And if parties are allowed to contest in the selection or election of MMDs, it deals with fanatics or politics. You see, Nanado's party is not too popular in the Volta region. But as he has won election, he's supposed to appoint and superimpose an MMDC on the people there. You see, so what happens is that we lost the national elections, and then we are brooding over our defeat. And then, even though the party is not popular here, they are going to also impose a candidate on us. Sometimes what happens is sabotage. People will sabotage it. But there is a feeling of inclusion. There is a feeling of, we lost here, but we won here. When there is direct election of MMDC.
And it doesn't feel too bad.
So, I mean, it gives effective and true meaning to the idea of power to the people.
I was watching President Barack Obama speaking, and one of the things he said, one of his achievements that he said was that he was happy that there was his 8 years were totally scandal free and virtually scandal free. Have we just witnessed our first scandal? I want to play this video for you to have a look at it. It concerns the speech that was delivered on Saturday at the inauguration, and the accusations is that the speechwriter plagiarized portions of George Bush's inaugural speech in 2001. Take a look right now.
I ask you to be citizens.
I ask you to be citizens.
Citizens, not spectators.
Citizens, not spectators.
Citizens, not subjects.
Citizens, not subjects.
Responsible citizens building communities of service and a nation of character.
Responsible citizens building your communities and our nation.
There's another section of the speech which lifts portions of President Clinton's inaugural in 1993 and other sections as well. For me as a Ghanaian, it's embarrassing because I'm reading Al Jazeera, I'm listening to BBC, Washington Post is making digs at our president, wondering whether Trump should include him in his cabinet. The head of communication has apologized for this particular statement. Should the president be firing somebody for embarrassing him royally on the day where everything should have come together? This has taken the shine away from the inaugural speech, has it not?
You know, I'm a very blunt person, but with this particular incident, I don't know. I'm so embarrassed, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I mean, people are laughing at our president today, all over.
You know, Nanado himself is an excellent speech maker. I'm sure if he had been given the chance, or if he had decided to write his own speech, he would have made he would have written an excellent speech without all that. His speech writer disappointed him.
Or writers, could be many people.
Well, I'm thinking that because they thought it was old. I mean, the Clintons' own, I think, happened in 1993 and all that.
Bush 2001. 20-something years ago. But we have Google now.
So, you see, the speech itself was so nice.
It was.
It was so inspiring and all that, to the point that I believe it set his detractors to conduct some research and all that. And I think those who were helping in the speech writing should have known and should have anticipated that if you make such a flowery speech, people would wonder. I mean, this is so good, so let's begin to.
And you're an academic. I mean, what would you do to your students who presented a paper that had portions lifted out of it?
Well, not even to my student, even to myself. I mean, we write to become, to rise through the ranks to become an associate professor of podcast. It's not easy. Okay, you write a paper and then you send it abroad and they run it through.
They run the checks.
Turn it in check, and they said 10% of your paper is plagiarized, so they reject it. 10%.
That's the threshold.
Yeah. Okay, well, some journals will allow 20%, some will allow 15% and all that. And that one is not even that you have quoted the person dito, as it were. Sometimes you are communicating ideas and they feel that the ideas are somebody's ideas, even not directly word for word and all that.
The president ran on an agenda of competence.
Yeah.
Should he fire somebody for incompetence?
Well, you see, a public apology has been rendered.
It's not good enough.
And
it's only mentioned one bit of the speech.
I know.
And there's at least there's about four or five. There's something from Kennedy, there's Clinton, there's Buhari, his guest who was sitting there with him.
I know. My own view is that it's quite embarrassing, and we know that we are told that Buhari had to fire one of his speechwriters for doing, also for embarrassing him and all that. But I think that there are other serious and important decisions that Nanado must be making, and we don't want to have him distracted by this issue, even though it is very serious. And so
it's trending now.
Yes, I know. Once an apology has been rendered, okay, if there is a way the press, he himself could also add his voice to it, that look, it was disappointment, and publicly rebuke the speechwriters.
You want the president to do that? I mean, in political communication, what would that achieve? What would that achieve?
It would put the whole matter, to rest. It would sober things a little. But for now, it is embarrassing. I'm not too much in support of the call for those guys to be fired. I think that a public rebuke to show that it's a national embarrassment and we abhor that should be final, because this is a government that is now starting. Today is its first day, so the first day it fired somebody. It doesn't really. It's not a good omen, a good sign, and all that. And so publicly rebuking them, and then I mean this is something that I'm not sure would ever happen again. And so a public rebuke will solve, in my view, the problem in a way. But honestly, I was embarrassed as an academic. I mean, now in Legon, we have policies on plagiarism. And I don't know whether you remember, a whole minister, I won't mention his name, had his PhD, his degree cancelled simply because there were some lines in his thesis that were described, were lifted from some sources without he acknowledging and all that. And so in Legon now, even when students write essays, we have turned it in that we run to check to ensure that you don't plagiarize and all that. I think going forward, this should be a wake-up call for him. And no matter, the president should know that no matter how he trusts people, he should be mindful of the work he gives to them and try to also double check. Don't overly trust people simply because they've been with you.
The president should do a Google check on the speech.
I mean, this is an eye-opener. This is a lesson, okay? So don't overly trust people simply because they've been with you for long.
Okay.
So these things shouldn't happen again. I was embarrassed, but I think, you see, we cannot afford to distract the president, from his core things he wants to be doing by going this route.
Okay.
Of course, the opposition NDC would do that. That is to be expected.
But not all those who are critical are necessarily NDC. And that's a feeling you get on social media, that if you criticize it, then you are NDC.
Well, no, I'm saying that we all cannot afford to be distracting the president from his core mandate. But the opposition would want to
I've seen words like incompetence and copytest, because making a play on competence. I want to wrap this up by asking, is this the end of the era of the Johns? Because since 1981, really, that was pre Fourth Republic, we've had Johns sitting on that throne.
Are you sure the man is not called John?
No, I know he was called William, and they used to call him Billy when he was in the UK. Is this the era of the Johns? And he did talk about being in the unique position of having 3 former presidents from whom he could take advice. President Rawlings, President Kufuor, President Mahama. Is this the end of the Johns?
Well, if there is another John and he is qualified and competent, I think Johns will come back. But I think, well, I don't know, but I think generally Ghanaians were. I mean, Ghanaians, we know how to ease tension. We know how to create humors and all that. And so it's not about the name; it's about who is qualified. And having 3 former heads of state to advise. I mean, I think from 79 Constitution and even the committee of experts whose recommendation led to the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution, they had all said that certain former heads of state should serve on the Council of State. Indeed. Rawlings removed that provision because he didn't know how he was going to work with Lehman and all that. And the point is, I mean, if you have these people who have seen it all before serving you or working with you at the level of Council of State, you'll be able to ensure that decisions that are made are properly thought through because you benefit from their wise counsel.
Those are the Johns there, with exception, of course, President Atta Mills. 3 of them are there, very much alive, right there. The 3 Johns are right there. President Rawlings, President Kufuor, President Mahama. Those 3 Johns. A fantastic think tank, if you ask me, to solve whatever problem that he may have. And he must be blessed
because
for that.
They've seen it all before. And so they will be able, and they are not looking forward to becoming presidents again. And so they will be candid, okay? Unlike the kinds of people who surround the presidents, and parade themselves as members of Council of State, where the president has overwhelming influence in determining who become a member of the Council of State, and their advice is also not binding. They are always bootlicking, and they are always trying to tell President what the president want to hear. I mean, these people are quite independent. They are going to be taken care of they were taken care of, and they will be taken care of till even they die.
Last question: would you be surprised if President Mahama staged a comeback in 2020?
I'll be surprised. He shouldn't.
But it's possible, though, isn't it?
It is possible, but for me, he has served his term. He should go. Okay, because if it is unlikely that if the MPP decides to contest the next election in 2020, it's unlikely that they will lose.
Who knows tomorrow, Prof?
I know, but it is unlikely that they will lose. And don't forget that we don't know Mahama yet. We don't know him.
All right. Then.
Okay, we would know him after 1 year or 2 years in this administration. That is when we'll know whether he was a good president or he was really somebody who was really bad.
All right, Professor Ransford Gyampo is the Director for the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Thank you very much for this very insightful discussion. And we'd like to congratulate the President of the Republic, 5th President in the 4th Republic, President Nana Akufo-Addo. There he is, right there. Congratulations, sir. And we shall be looking forward to the first 100 days. April 17 will be a historic date for us. Thank you so much, Prof.
My pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.
That was your Hard Talk.